My name is Lucia, and I need to tell you about the night my father looked me in the eyes and called me a burden in front of everyone I'd ever loved. It was late September, warm enough that the patio doors at my parents' house stood wide open, letting in the smell of cut grass and honeysuckle. The living room was packed, cousins I hadn't seen in years, aunts who still pinched my cheeks like I was 7, my Uncle Rick who always smelled like cigar smoke and Old Spice. They'd flown in from all over Cleveland, Austin. Even Aunt Margie came from Spokane, which she never did because she hated flying. The occasion, my brother's promotion. Carter had just made senior partner at his law firm in Manhattan. 34 years old, Harvard Law, corner office with a view of the Hudson. My parents were beside themselves. Mom had been cooking for 3 days straight her famous lasagna, garlic bread, that strawberry cake with the cream cheese frosting that took her 6 hours to make. Dad had ordered a case of champagne. The good stuff. French. He kept saying the name with this exaggerated accent that made my younger cousin Becca giggle. I'd arrived late. Traffic on the I-90 had been a nightmare, and I'd spent 40 minutes in my car rehearsing what I'd say when someone inevitably asked what I'd been up to. I was still wearing my work clothes, black slacks, a plain blouse, flats that were wearing thin at the heels. I hadn't had time to change. When I walked in, Carter was holding court in the center of the room, champagne flute in hand, telling some story about a case he'd won. Everyone was laughing. He had that way about him, always had. He could make a story about grocery shopping sound like an adventure. He looked good too. Tailored suit, expensive watch, that confident smile that came from never doubting you belonged exactly where you were. Mom hugged me at the door, but it was quick, distracted. Oh good. You made it. Go get some food, honey. Your father's about to make a toast. I filled a plate I didn't want and found a spot near the back, by the bookshelf where Dad kept his collection of first editions he never read. Carter caught my eye and gave me a nod. Not quite a smile, just acknowledgement. The way you'd acknowledge someone you used to know well but had grown distant from. That's what we'd become. Distant. It hadn't always been that way. When we were kids, Carter used to let me tag along everywhere. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to throw a football, how to skip stones across Miller's Pond. When I was 8 and broke my arm falling out of the treehouse, he's the one who carried me home, running the whole way, crying harder than I was. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. Maybe it was when he went off to boarding school and I stayed at Lincoln High. Maybe it was when he got into Harvard and I went to State. Maybe it was just a slow, inevitable drift that happens when one person's life becomes extraordinary and the others remain stubbornly ordinary. Dad clinked a knife against his glass. The room fell silent. I want to say a few words, he began, his voice thick with emotion already. Dad was a big man, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, the kind of presence that commanded attention without trying. He'd been a district attorney for 30 years before retiring. People respected him. Hell, people feared him a little. When Linda and I had Carter, he continued, Mom beaming beside him, we knew he was special. You could just tell. Even as a baby, he had this focus, this determination. I felt my stomach tighten. I knew where this was going. Carter has made us proud every single day of his life. Every report card, every award, every milestone. He's never given us a moment's worry. He set his mind to something and he did it. No excuses, no shortcuts, just hard work and brilliance. The room murmured appreciatively. Carter looked down, doing his humble routine, but I could see the corner of his mouth twitching. He loved this. To watch him become senior partner at one of New York's most prestigious firms. Dad's voice cracked. He actually had tears in his eyes. I don't have words for how proud I am. Carter, you're everything a father could hope for in a son. You've exceeded every dream I ever had. He raised his glass. Everyone else did too, a forest of crystal catching the lamplight. To Carter. To Carter. The room echoed. They drank. They cheered. Uncle Rick clapped Carter on the back so hard he nearly spilled his champagne. Aunt Margie was actually crying, and then Dad's eyes found mine across the room. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, something that made my blood run cold. You know, he said, his voice carrying despite the noise, It's funny how differently children turn out. The room didn't go silent. Not exactly. But I felt a shift, a subtle turning of heads. Linda and I, we raised both our children the same. Same values. Same opportunities. Same love. He was still looking at me. But one of them took those opportunities and ran with them. Built something. Made something of themselves. My face was burning. I couldn't move. The other one. He shook his head almost sadly. Well, we can't all be exceptional, I suppose. Someone laughed nervously. I think it was Uncle Rick. Mom was looking down at her hands. Some children are a blessing, Dad continued, and now there was an edge in his voice, sharp as broken glass. And some are just a burden you carry because you have to. Because that's what parents do. They carry their burdens with grace. The room was fully silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. I stood there, plate in hand, face hot, heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I waited for him to laugh, to say he was joking, to do something, anything, that would make this not be what it so clearly was. But he just took another sip of champagne and turned back to Carter. Anyway, he said, his voice lied again. Tonight is about celebrating excellence. Carter, son, I am so damn proud of you. Another round of cheers. The moment passed for everyone else. They went back to their conversations, their drinks, their celebration. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Carter was looking at me now, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt? Pity? It was gone before I could name it. Mom appeared at my elbow. Honey, he didn't mean it's fine, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. He's just had a little too much champagne. You know how he gets. It's fine. I repeated, but it wasn't fine. We both knew it wasn't fine. I set my untouched plate on the bookshelf and headed for the bathroom, moving through the crowd like a ghost. No one stopped me. I'm not sure anyone even noticed. I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. Same dark eyes as my father. Same stubborn chin. Same broad shoulders that looked wrong on a woman. Or so Grandma Dorothy used to say. I was 31 years old. I had a job, an apartment. I paid my bills. I wasn't extraordinary, but I wasn't nothing. Was I? I thought about the last time Dad had really looked at me, really seen me. I couldn't remember. It had been years since we'd had a real conversation. Years since he'd asked me about my life with genuine interest rather than obligation. At some point, I'd become invisible to him. No worse than invisible. I'd become a disappointment so profound he couldn't even pretend otherwise. Someone knocked on the door. Occupied, I called. Lucia? It's me. Carter. I didn't answer. Come on, Luz. Open up. I unlocked the door. He slipped inside, closing it behind him. You okay? He asked. I almost laughed. Am I okay? Did you hear what he just said? He's drunk. You know how he gets. That's what Mom said. Because it's true. He doesn't mean it. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. In his expensive suit with his expensive watch and his expensive life that Dad loved so much. Yes, he does, I said quietly. He means every word. Carter's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might actually defend me. Might say something like you're not a burden or I'll talk to him or literally anything that would prove he still cared. Instead, he said, don't make this into a thing, okay? It's my night. Can we just not? Something inside me cracked. Clean and final, like ice breaking on a frozen pond. Of course, I said. It's your night. Wouldn't want to ruin it. I pushed past him and walked out of the bathroom. Walked through the living room where everyone was still laughing and drinking and celebrating everything I wasn't. Walked out the front door into the warm September night. No one stopped me. No one even noticed I'd left. I sat in my car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house. Through the windows, I could see them all, my family, moving and laughing and living in a world where I didn't quite fit, where I'd never quite fit. I thought about driving away and never coming back. Thought about all the birthday dinners and Christmas mornings and Sunday brunches I could just not attend. Would they even notice? Would anyone ask where I was? But I didn't drive away. Not yet. Because the thing about being called a burden is that some part of you immediately wants to prove them wrong, wants to show them they don't know you at all, that they've underestimated you so profoundly it's almost funny. I just didn't know how. I pulled out my phone. I had 17 work emails waiting. Always 17 emails. I was a regional coordinator for a humanitarian organization called Global Relief Initiative. We did disaster response, refugee aid, medical missions to places most people couldn't find on a map. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay well, but it mattered. At least, I'd always thought it mattered. One email stood out. It was from my boss, Dr. Helena Martinez. The subject line read, "Urgent Situation Update." I opened it. "Lucia, we need you in the office first thing tomorrow. The Syria operation is reaching critical mass. Media requests are piling up. We need to discuss next steps for the unbriefing and the press conference. This is bigger than we anticipated. Please confirm receipt." I stared at the words. The Syria operation. I'd been running point on it for 8 months. It had started small, a medical supply convoy to 3 displaced persons camps outside Aleppo. But it had grown, expanded, become something that was attracting international attention. Tomorrow morning, press conference. I thought about Dad in there raising his glass to Carter. Thought about the word burden and how it had felt like a punch to the stomach. I typed out a reply. Confirmed. I'll be there. Then I started my car and drove home to my small apartment with the leaky faucet and the view of the parking lot. And I tried not to think about the fact that my own father didn't love me. I tried, and I failed. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I was back at my desk by 7 a.m. Global Relief Initiative operated out of a modest office building in downtown Buffalo, 3 floors. Old carpeting, that particular smell of industrial coffee and overworked air conditioning. My desk was in the corner by the window, buried under stacks of files and reports and photographs from the field. Photos of children in refugee camps, of medical tents, of the aftermath of things most people never have to see. Helena found me 20 minutes later. "Coffee?" she offered, holding out a cup. God, yes. She sat on the edge of my desk. Helena was 56, Brazilian, with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too much but somehow remained kind. She'd been doing humanitarian work since before I was born. She was the reason I'd gotten into this field. "You look tired," she observed. "Family thing last night." Ah. She didn't push. Helena understood that sometimes family was the most complicated disaster of all. "So," I said, trying to focus. "The Syria situation." Helena's expression shifted, became serious in a way that made my stomach drop. "It's exploded, Lucia. The story is everywhere. CNN picked it up. BBC, Al Jazeera. The medical convoy you organized, the one that was supposed to just deliver supplies? Yeah. It saved over 4,000 people. The camps you reached had been cut off for weeks. No food, no medicine. Children dying of preventable diseases. You punched through a blockade that everyone said was impossible to navigate. You negotiated with 3 different armed factions. You got the supplies through. I knew all this. I'd lived it. Spent 6 weeks in the field coordinating logistics, making calls at 3 a.m., arguing with warlords and bureaucrats and everyone in between. One of the doctors you sent in started documenting everything. Helena continued. Dr. Rashid. He's been sending footage to international news outlets. Lucia, the entire world is watching what you built. What we built, I corrected. It was a team effort. Don't do that. Helena said firmly. Don't minimize this. You led this operation. You made the decisions. When everyone said it couldn't be done, you did it anyway. She pulled out her phone and showed me a news alert. Breaking. Humanitarian corridor saves thousands in Syria, and below it, a smaller headline. American aid worker coordinates unprecedented relief of 40 felt dizzy. There's more, Helena said. The UN wants to brief you. They're considering replicating your model in Yemen and Sudan. And the press conference this afternoon, it's not just local anymore. It's international media. Helena, I can't. Yes. You can. You have to. These people deserve to have their story told. And you're the one who made it possible. I thought about Dad, about burden, about invisibility. What time is the press conference? I asked quietly. 3 p.m. Here's the thing though, she hesitated. We couldn't secure our usual venue. The hotel conference room wasn't available, so we're holding it at the Federal Building downtown. And because of the international interest, it's being broadcast live. Live? CNN primarily. But the feed is going out everywhere. This is big, Lucia. Are you ready for this? I wanted to say no. Wanted to say I was just doing my job. That I wasn't special. That I was exactly what my father had said I was: ordinary, unremarkable, a burden. But I looked at the photos on my desk, at the faces of the children who now had medicine, who now had food, who now had a chance. I'm ready, I said. The hours until 3 p.m. passed in a blur. Helena helped me prepare talking points. We reviewed the operation timeline. We coordinated with Dr. Rashid via satellite phone. He was still in Syria, still working, and his voice cracked with emotion when he thanked me. You saved them, he kept saying. You saved so many. I changed into the spare blazer I kept at the office. Navy blue, professional, a little too big in the shoulders. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and tried to see what Helena saw. What Dr. Rashid saw. All I saw was Dad's daughter. The disappointing one. At 2:45, we drove to the Federal Building. There were news vans parked outside, cameras being set up. I saw the CNN logo and felt my heart lurch. Inside, the press room was filling up. More cameras than I'd ever seen. Reporters checking their equipment. A podium with a cluster of microphones. The official seal of the U.S. Department of State on the wall behind it. Oh God, I whispered. Helena squeezed my hand. You've got this. Just tell them the truth. Tell them what happened. Tell them why it mattered. At 2:58, someone called for everyone to take their places. At 2:59, I walked to the podium. At 3 o'clock exactly, we went live. I don't remember the first few minutes. I know I introduced myself, thanked people for coming, gave an overview of the Global Relief Initiative's mission, but then I started talking about Syria, about the camps, about the blockade that had cut them off from the rest of the world, about the children dying because no one could reach them. And something shifted inside me. I stopped reading from my notes. I stopped being nervous. I just talked. I told them about Amira, a 7-year-old girl with asthma who couldn't breathe because there were no inhalers. About how her mother had walked 15 miles trying to find medicine, only to be turned back at every checkpoint. I told them about the convoy, about the weeks of planning, about the negotiations with faction leaders who had no reason to trust me, about the moment we finally broke through and saw the camps and realized how bad it really was. I told them about Dr. Rashid and the medical team who worked 30-hour shifts, about the volunteers who unloaded trucks in 100-degree heat, about everyone who'd said it couldn't be done and how we did it anyway. 4,217 people, I said. That's how many lives we reached. That's how many people who were dying are now living because a group of ordinary people decided that saving lives was more important than safety or comfort or fear. The room was silent. Every camera was on me. I'm not a hero, I continued. I'm just someone who couldn't look at those photos and do nothing. I'm just someone who believes that every life has value, that every child deserves a chance, that we can't turn away from suffering just because it's far away or complicated or hard. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Valdez, there are reports that you personally negotiated with known militants to secure safe passage. Can you comment on that? I took a breath. Yes, I spoke with people that our government considers enemies, because those people controlled the roads we needed to use. And I told them that what we were carrying wasn't weapons or politics. It was medicine. It was food. It was help for children who were dying. And I asked them, as human beings, to let us through. And they did. Eventually. Yes, not all of them, but enough. Another hand. What's next for you? Dion has mentioned your name for advisory positions. I hadn't heard that. Helena hadn't mentioned it. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I'm focused on the people we've helped and the work that still needs to be done. There are more camps, more people suffering. The Syria operation was just one step. We have a long way to go. The questions kept coming. For 40 minutes, I stood at that podium and talked about the work, about the mission, about why it mattered. And then, right as we were wrapping up, one reporter asked, Do you have family here in Buffalo? Are they proud of what you've accomplished? I froze. The room was silent again, but this time it felt different, charged. I thought about lying, thought about saying something diplomatic and moving on. Instead, I said, "That's a complicated question." The reporter pressed, "How so?" "My family doesn't really understand what I do," I said slowly. "They don't see the value in it. Last night, actually, I was at a family gathering, and my father made it pretty clear that he considers my work considers me to be a burden rather than a blessing." I don't know why I said it. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because I'd spent the last hour talking about truth and I couldn't stop. Maybe because some part of me wanted them to know, wanted someone to know. But standing here today, I continued, knowing that 4,000 people are alive because of work that my father thinks is worthless, it makes me realize that the people whose opinions matter most aren't always the ones closest to you. Sometimes they're the ones you've never met, the ones you've saved, the ones who see you for who you really are. The reporter looked stunned. The room was electric. "Thank you," I said. "That's all." I stepped away from the podium. Helena caught my arm, her eyes wide. "Lucia, I know," I said. "I shouldn't have said that, no," she said slowly. "I think maybe you should have." We went back to the office. I collapsed into my desk chair, adrenaline draining away, leaving me hollow and shaky. "That was incredible," Helena said. "You were incredible. I basically told the entire world my father doesn't love me. You told the truth. There's power in that." My phone started buzzing. Text messages, emails, social media notifications. The press conference was spreading across the internet like wildfire. People were sharing it, commenting, talking about the work. Yes, but also about what I'd said at the end. "This woman is a hero and her family doesn't even see it. Imagine saving 4,000 lives and your dad calling you a burdensome. Families don't deserve their children." Put my phone face down. I didn't want to read anymore. And then, at 5:47 p.m., I got a call, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Lucia?" A man's voice. Familiar but not. "Yes? This is James Whitmore. I'm a producer at CNN. We've been covering your press conference all afternoon. Your story is everywhere right now. We'd like to do a longer segment. Maybe a full profile. Would you be interested?" I don't know. Look, I'll be honest with you. The part about your father that's resonating with people. A lot of people. We've had thousands of responses. People sharing their own stories. Talking about family rejection and finding validation elsewhere. This is bigger than Syria, Miss Valdez. This is about what it means to be seen. I closed my eyes. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Lucia, I think you should know your father called our office about an hour ago." My blood went cold. "What?" "He was upset about what you said. Wanted us to issue a retraction or clarification. Claimed you'd misrepresented things." "Oh God." "We told him we only report what people say. And you said it clearly. But I thought you should know he's aware. And based on his tone, I'd expect you'll be hearing from him soon." "Right. Okay, thank you." I hung up. Helena was watching me. "Your father?" "Saw the press conference. Called CNN to complain about me." "Of course he did." We sat in silence for a moment. Then my phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number. Home. My parents' house. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, another call. "Carter." Voicemail. Then Mom. Voicemail. Then Dad again. I turned my phone off. "You should go home," Helena said gently. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be intense." "What's tomorrow?" "More interviews. More calls. The unbriefing." "Lucia, your life just changed. You need to process that." I drove home in a daze. My apartment felt smaller than usual, quieter. I sat on my couch and stared at nothing and tried to understand what had just happened. I'd told the truth. That's all. I'd told the truth about my father and about being called a burden and about what that felt like. And somehow, that truth had traveled around the world faster than the news about saving 4,000 lives. I turned my phone back on. 63 missed calls, hundreds of texts, and one voicemail from Dad. Left just 10 minutes ago. My hand shook as I played it. Lucia. His voice was cold, harder than I'd ever heard it. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you've embarrassed this family on an international stage. You made me look like a villain. After everything I've done for you, after everything I've given you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in front of the entire world. A pause. I could hear him breathing. You want to talk about burdens? You've been a disappointment since the day you gave up on law school to play hero in third world countries. You've wasted every opportunity I gave you. And now you're destroying my reputation because you can't handle the truth about yourself. Another pause. Don't bother coming to Sunday dinner. Don't bother calling your mother until you publicly apologize and set the record straight. You're not welcome in this house. The message ended. I played it again and again, and then I started laughing. I don't know why. Maybe because it was so perfectly Dad, so perfectly in character. Even now, especially now, he couldn't see me, couldn't hear me, could only think about himself. I saved the voicemail. Then I called James Whitmore back. I'll do the interview, I said. I'll do all of them. I want to tell my story. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. CNN did a full profile. Then BBC. Then NPR. My face was on news sites. My name was trending on social media. The Syria operation became the serious story, became the Lucia story, became something I couldn't fully comprehend. People sent messages. Thousands of them. People who'd been rejected by their families. People who'd chosen purpose over prestige. People who just wanted me to know I wasn't alone. The unconfirmed, the advisory position. 3 other organizations reached out with offers. A publisher asked if I'd consider writing a book, and through it all, my phone stayed silent where it mattered most. No call from Dad. No text from Carter. Radio silence until Sunday afternoon, when Carter finally broke and called. You need to fix this, he said without preamble. Hello to you too. I'm serious, Lucia. Dad is a mess. Mom is crying constantly. You've made this family a laughingstock, have I? Or did Dad do that himself? He was drunk. He didn't mean what he said. Then why won't he apologize? Silence. You know why? I said quietly. Because he did mean it. He's always meant it. And now everyone knows. You can't just air our family's dirty laundry, why not? He's been treating me like garbage for years. Years, Carter. And you've watched it happen. You've never once stood up for me. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked me about my life? When's the last time you called just to talk? When's the last time you treated me like a sister instead of an embarrassment? I could hear him breathing on the other end. I miss you, I said, and my voice cracked. I miss my brother. I miss having a family that sees me. But I can't keep shrinking myself to make everyone else comfortable. I can't keep pretending that what happened was okay. So what? You're just done with us. I'm done accepting scraps. I'm done being grateful for the bare minimum. If Dad wants a relationship with me, he knows what he needs to do. He needs to apologize. Sincerely. Not because CNN is watching. Because he means it. He'll never do that. I know, I said. That's the saddest part. I know. I hung up. 3 weeks later, I was back in Syria. Not permanently. Just for a follow-up visit. To see the camps. To meet the people we'd helped. Amira, the little girl with asthma, ran up to me the moment I stepped out of the transport vehicle. She threw her arms around my waist and looked up at me with huge brown eyes. Thank you, she said in careful English. Thank you for my medicine. I knelt down to her level. You're welcome, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Good. I can breathe now. I can run. To demonstrate, she ran in a circle around me, laughing. Her mother approached, tears streaming down her face. She didn't speak English, but Dr. Rashid translated. She says you are an angel. She says you saved her daughter's life. She says she prays for you every night. I hugged her. We stood there in the dusty camp, 2 mothers who weren't mothers, holding each other and crying. That night, sitting in my tent, I wrote an email. Dear Dad, I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need you to be proud of me. I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for you, and I finally realized I was always enough. Just not for you. I save lives. I make a difference. I matter to people who've never met me and never will. That's more than most people can say. It's certainly more than you can say. I hope someday you'll understand what you lost when you called me a burden. But even if you don't, I'll be okay. Because I know who I am now. And I know I'm not a burden. I'm a blessing. Just not yours. Luigi, I didn't send it. I didn't need to. I deleted it and lay back on my cot and looked up at the ceiling of the tent and thought about everything that had changed in 3 weeks. My father had called me a burden, the world had called me a hero, and somewhere in between, I'd finally learned to call myself enough. That was the real story. Not the Syria operation. Not the press conference. Not even the family drama that had captivated the internet. The real story was simpler and harder and more important than all of that. I'd been invisible my whole life. And then I'd decided to be seen. I came back to Buffalo 6 weeks later. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. The leaky faucet, the parking lot view, the stacks of files on my desk. But I was different. Helena met me at the office with coffee and a hug that lasted a full minute. "Welcome back," she said. "Ready to change the world some more?" "Always. Good. Because we have 17 new operations that need your expertise. Yemen is asking for you specifically. So is Sudan. And the UN wants you to lead a task force on humanitarian corridors and conflict zones." "Helena, I'm just one person." "You're never just one person. You're every person you've inspired. Every person you've saved. Every person who's watched you stand up and refuse to be small." My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Lucia. This is Margie, your aunt. I saw what happened with your father. I want you to know I've been watching your work for years. I'm so proud of you. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Don't let anyone tell you different." I smiled. Another text. This one from Uncle Rick. "You're a badass, kid. Always knew it. Your dad's an idiot. Call me sometime." And another. And another. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. People from high school. Former professors. A web of support I hadn't known existed. Suddenly visible. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw the name. Mom. But I picked up. "Hi, Mom. Lucia." Her voice was thick with tears. "Can we talk? In person? About everything. About what your father said. About how I should have defended you. About how proud I am and how sorry I am and how much I've missed you." I closed my eyes. "Is Dad there?" "No, he's staying at Carter's for a while. We're separating." "What?" "I watched that press conference, Lucia. I heard what you said. And I realized I'd been watching him diminish you for years. Decades. And I let it happen because it was easier than standing up to him. But I can't do it anymore. I won't." I couldn't speak. "You saved 4,000 people," Mom continued. "And I couldn't even save my own daughter from her father. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." "Mom, can I see you? Please?" We met for coffee the next day. A little cafe downtown, neutral territory, public enough to feel safe. She looked older than I remembered. Tired, but also somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. "Your father's furious," she said. "At me? At you? At the world? Has he said anything about apologizing?" "No, he thinks he's the victim in all this. He thinks you betrayed him." I stirred my coffee. "Do you think I betrayed him?" "No," she said firmly. "I think you told the truth. And the truth wasn't kind to him because he hasn't been kind to you, Mom. Why did he always hate me so much?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He doesn't hate you, then what?" She took a breath. "When you were little, you were so much like him. Stubborn, passionate, independent. And I think that scared him. He couldn't control you the way he could control Carter. You always questioned things. Always pushed back. Always had your own mind. So he what? Decided to break me? I think he decided that if he couldn't shape you into what he wanted, he'd rather pretend you weren't his. It's not rational. It's not fair. But that's what happened. And I let it happen because confronting him meant confronting our entire marriage. And I was too afraid. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not angry at you, Mom. You should be. Maybe. But anger takes energy I don't have anymore. I just want to move forward." She squeezed my hand. Can I be part of that? Moving forward? Yeah, I said. Yeah, you can. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. About my work, about her life, about all the years we'd lost to silence and fear and Dad's shadow. When we finally stood to leave, she hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, she whispered. So incredibly proud. I should have said it a long time ago. You're saying it now, I told her. That's what matters. Dad never apologized. 3 months after the press conference, Carter called to tell me Dad had started therapy. Not because he wanted to, but because Carter had insisted. Told him if he wanted to remain in his grandson's life, Carter's son, who'd been born 2 weeks earlier, he needed to work on himself. He's talking about you in sessions, Carter said. The therapist is trying to help him understand what he did. And it's slow. Really slow. He's got decades of patterns to unlearn. But he's trying. Is he sorry? Carter hesitated. I think he's sorry about the consequences. I don't know if he's sorry about what he said. Not yet. Then nothing's changed. Lucia, Carter, I can't keep waiting for him to become someone he's not. I've built a whole life without his approval. A good life. An important life. I'm not putting that on hold hoping he'll have an epiphany. I understand. I just thought you should know he's working on it. Okay. Thank you for telling me. And Lucia? I'm sorry too. For not standing up for you. For being a coward when you needed a brother. My throat tightened. You're calling now. That's something. It's not enough. No? I agreed. But it's a start. 6 months after the press conference, I was invited to speak at the General Assembly. I stood at that iconic podium, looking out at representatives from 193 countries. And I talked about humanitarian corridors, about the Syria model, about how we'd replicated it in Yemen and Sudan and Myanmar, about the 12,000 lives we'd saved since that first convoy, 12,000 people who were alive because someone decided to try. After my speech, I was approached by a woman from the Norwegian delegation. She was maybe 60, silver-haired, wearing a crisp suit and kind eyes. Miss Valdez, she said, I wanted to thank you. For what? My daughter saw your press conference. The one where you talked about your father. She'd been struggling with her own family situation, similar dynamics. She felt worthless. Like nothing she did mattered because her parents didn't approve of her choices. I'm sorry, I said. That's a terrible feeling. It was. But after watching you, after seeing someone stand up and claim their worth despite family rejection, she found the courage to do the same. She's thriving now, happy, free, and she wanted me to tell you that you saved her life too. Not in Syria, right here. Just by being brave enough to tell the truth. I felt tears prick my eyes. Please tell her thank you. And tell her she saved herself. I just showed her it was possible. Isn't that what saving someone means? Showing them it's possible? I thought about that a lot in the months that followed. How many different ways there are to save a life. How sometimes the most important thing you can do is just refuse to disappear. Refuse to be small. Refuse to accept someone else's diminishment of your worth. A year after the press conference, almost to the day, I got a letter, handwritten. My father's precise script on cream-colored stationery. I almost threw it away without opening it, but Helena, who was having coffee with me when it arrived, stopped me. Read it, she said. Whatever it says, you need to know. So I opened it. Lucia, I don't know how to write this letter. I've started it 20 times. My therapist says I need to stop overthinking and just tell you the truth. The truth is I was wrong. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about what matters. I was wrong about what makes someone worthy of pride and love. I spent my whole life measuring people by traditional success degrees, titles, money, status. And when you chose a different path, I saw it as rejection, as failure, as you throwing away everything I'd built for you. But you weren't throwing anything away. You were building something better, something that actually matters. You've saved thousands of lives. You've changed policy at the highest levels. You've inspired people around the world. And I called you a burden. That word haunts me. Every day, every night. I hear myself saying it and I want to go back and stop myself. But I can't. I can only move forward. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want me in your life. I just need you to know that I was wrong. Completely, utterly, devastatingly wrong. You're not a burden. You never were. You're remarkable, extraordinary, everything a father should be proud of. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. I'm sorry I needed the whole world to tell me what I should have known from the beginning. I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it in a way that mattered. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I understand. Dottie read it 3 times. Helena watched me waiting. Well? She finally asked. He apologized. How does that feel? Complicated, I said honestly. It's a year too late. 10 years too late, really. But it's also what I've wanted to hear my whole life. What are you going to do? I folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to sit with it. And then, maybe, I'll respond. But even if I never talk to him again, I'm okay. That's the thing. A year ago, I needed this apology to feel whole. Now, I'm already whole, with or without him. Helena smiled. That's growth. That's survival. I did eventually respond to Dad's letter, not right away. I took my time, processed, talked to my therapist, talked to Mom, who was now living in her own apartment and seemed lighter than I'd ever seen her. When I finally wrote back, it was simple. Dad, thank you for your letter. Thank you for finally seeing me. I'm willing to try. Slowly. No guarantees. But I'm willing to have coffee and see where things go. The relationship we had is gone. We can't get that back. But maybe we can build something new. Something honest. Something where I don't have to shrink myself to fit into your expectations. If you're willing to do that work, I'm willing to try. Lucio met for coffee 3 weeks later. It was awkward. Stilted. He looked older, more fragile somehow. The therapy had softened something in him, but he was still Dad. Still uncomfortable with emotion. Still not sure how to talk to me like a person instead of a disappointment. But he tried. He asked about my work. Really asked, with genuine interest. He listened when I talked about the new operations in Chad and the Democratic Republic of Congo. He didn't interrupt or minimize or change the subject to Carter. At the end, as we were leaving, he said, I'm reading about what you do. Everything you've published. Every interview. I'm trying to understand your world. That means a lot, I said. I have a long way to go to make up for lost time. Yeah, you do. Can we do this again? Coffee? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I said. We can do this again. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever completely. But it was a door cracked open. A possibility. And sometimes that's enough. 2 years after the press conference, I was featured on the cover of Time magazine. The headline read, The Burden Bearer. How Lucia Valdez turned family rejection into global impact. Inside was a full profile. Photos from Syria and Yemen and Sudan. Photos of me at the end. Photos of the children whose lives we'd saved. And at the end, a single quote that the journalist said summarized everything. My father called me a burden. The world calls me a hero. But the truth is simpler than either of those things. I'm just someone who refused to be invisible. And that changed everything. Dad framed the magazine cover. He put it in his study, right next to Carter's Harvard diploma. When I saw it during a family dinner, yes, I'd started attending again cautiously. Carefully, I didn't know how to feel. I'm proud of you, Dad said, noticing me staring at it. I know I didn't say it before, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you, Lucia. The words I'd waited my whole life to hear. And you know what? They did matter. Even after everything. Even after learning to live without them. They mattered. Thank you, I said. We still weren't close. We might never be close. The damage was too deep. The years too many. But we were something. We were trying. And in its own way, that was a kind of saving too. I'm writing this from a hotel room in Geneva. I'm here for another unbriefing. Tomorrow I'm meeting with the Secretary General to discuss expanding humanitarian corridors into 5 new conflict zones. My work has saved over 30,000 lives now. 30,000 people who are breathing, living, Loving because a network of dedicated people decided to punch through impossible barriers. People ask me all the time, was it worth it? The family pain, the public drama, the cost of telling the truth? And my answer is always the same. Yes, because here's what I've learned. Being seen is worth the price of being judged. Being authentic is worth the cost of being rejected. And building a life that matters is worth every sacrifice, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt. My father called me a burden, and in a way, I'm grateful he did, because it forced me to ask myself, what am I really worth? And the answer I found, the answer I built with my own hands in refugee camps and negotiations and impossible moments, was everything. I'm worth everything, not because I'm extraordinary, but because I'm me. Flawed, stubborn, passionate, imperfect me. And that's enough. That's always been enough. I just had to believe it. So to anyone reading this who's ever been called a burden, who's ever been made to feel invisible or worthless or wrong, I see you. I believe you. And I promise you this. The people who diminish you don't get to define you. You define you. And when you finally claim that power, when you finally stand up and refuse to be small, the whole world shifts. Maybe not right away, maybe not easily, but it shifts. Trust me. I know. This story is dedicated to everyone who's ever been underestimated, to everyone who's ever been told they weren't enough. You are enough. You've always been enough. And your worth isn't determined by who sees it, it's determined by you. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels.